James. Good to
Good
talk
to
with
see
you.
you. Yeah.
You too.
I love the way we wrote this one out. It's in special guest. I was curious who your special guest was. What's up, Eric?
Hello, hello. Am I the special guest? I
So
don't want to
special.
be.
So
Oof,
special.
that's
I don't
pressure.
know what everyone else does during their breaks, but we were discussing how relatively new movies in my lifetime are classics to the younger generation, and we still use like lines from those movies, and the younger generation thinks we made up these great lines. So like think Wedding Crashers. There's a whole bunch of funny lines in that movie, but now that's a classic. I can't believe that.
There's a
Y'all have
lot
a
of things
favorite?
that are classic to me. Anybody below 40, kid, and yeah, old movies are not that old to me.
Steve, do you have a favorite movie line you find yourself repeating all the time?
Ah, I don't, but I'm one of those that I'm always looking for a movie line to fit a situation instead of,
Yeah.
like, oh, I should insert this little quote here.
You could get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a bull's ass, but I better take the butcher's
That's
word for it.
that's where I was gonna go. As a salesperson, Tommy Boy resonates quite a
Tommy
bit.
boy. There's no guarantee on the box, Eric.
I love that one.
Well, hey, so to the group, let's keep it fun. I don't think we have a poll for this, but if you have a favorite classic movie line that you start to realize maybe the group around you isn't as aware of it, one of the ones I like to throw around every once in a while is it's too damn hot for a penguin to be just walking around. Sometimes people don't know why I'm saying that one. So if you got a favorite, throw it in the chat. I'd love to relive some of those movie lines. It's great. The chat already, Sarah, that was you. Wonderful. Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, so Steve, let's jump in. The evolution of ERPs and today's built-in security features. Well, that's pretty broad. That's a lot to talk about. I hope you're up for this task.
Sure, I'm up for it. And I think one way to start that part is to kind of talk about where we're coming from and kind of some of the things that we still have to deal with when we're talking how we're going to solve, for somebody's ERP security questions. And as we know, where we're coming from in most cases is an older legacy system, an on-premise system, a system that's being managed by another provider that we don't really know what their capabilities are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes not knowing who the players are, who the partners are, who's done the coding. There's and we've seen this in the past. A lot of my uh, prior history with doing Dynamics and even other applications, seeing almost with the ERP, almost like a set it and forget it kind of mentality of the IT guys are very concerned about everything, but when they don't understand an area, and often your core IT people don't understand what's happening in the ERP, and there's good reason because it's very specialized and it takes different talent. Um, but then they kind of like are trying their best, but not understanding all the risk, all of the capabilities, or sometimes locking it too tight. But um, that's a common problem with, I think, the legacy scenarios. And we've had some really bad, I mean, I've had a few of these, but one in particular I could say as far as kind of the worst cases, because again, ERPs sometimes is kind of the target of ransomware because they want to lock that data because they know the data is almost, I know email is important, but getting data, when you lock in someone's data and they can't process bills and they can't do their work. But we have one where it was legacy on premise. It was sort of hybrid. They had a hosting provider, but everything got locked up, and they worked and fought with the IT provider in different groups for over a month. Finally, brought us in, and unfortunately, all we could do at that point was help them start over in a new system, which we did. But the impact to the business was, I think, 6 months later they were out of business. They were effectively down a month, and they were pretty small. So it's very unfortunate, scenario, but unfortunately, it's not that uncommon when you still see some of these, on-premise or legacy solutions. So where that moves us to as far as the evolution side is, where are we at now? Well, with, what we really work on currently is Business Central. Business Central is a Microsoft ERP product that lives in the Microsoft cloud. It's in Microsoft Azure managed. From my perspective as a solution architect and talking with prospects about, when the questions come up about security, when questions come up about the platform, it's still an important conversation, but from my perspective, it's a lot shorter conversation because I know I've got the resources of, well, this is in the Microsoft cloud. I've got resources available, and I think Eric can probably speak to this a little bit more, but there's resources there available for Microsoft to say, here's the audits that we go through. Here's what happens with our data centers, things that I can just easily, quickly turn over to those that are asking so they have confidence in what we're delivering. And so it's, for us, it's a lot less concern about the infrastructure because we have Microsoft handling that, and we can focus more on cybersecurity from inside the application. I know what you have some thoughts there, Eric, on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. And look, thanks for making me the special guest. I hope it's an opportunity to live up to the title. So for one thing, just a quick introduction. So I sit on the partner solutions team at Microsoft, and what that generally means is I look after our partner ecosystem in a customer segment where most customers don't have a dedicated account team at Microsoft, right? So if you're Bank of America or Coca-Cola, you've got an awful lot of people at Microsoft calling on you. And then there's a managed segment where there's account executive specialists, technical specialists, but the majority, in fact, globally, 99% of Microsoft customers don't have a dedicated account team. So folks like Center are the pre-sales, sales, evaluation, selection, implementation, support for us. And I support that ecosystem, right? Work with Center quite a bit. So I see and hear, these stories that you're talking about, Steve, right? Like these customers that end up on an island. And look, Microsoft is doing this ourselves right now. So we've announced the end of life and end of security patches for one of our legacy on-prem products, Microsoft GP, Great Plains, if you're familiar with it. And it certainly does expose customers to trouble. And I would share two things. Number one, I loved your statement about the bad actors, like ERP and financials. Two things. Number one, it's important personal data of a business that bad actors are trying to get their hands on. And then if you're in supply chain, if you're in distribution, being able to lock up that system and prevent you from shipping product or invoicing your vendors or customers or paying your vendors puts you in a position from ransomware that you're in a bad spot at that point. So I think that this is a key opportunity to talk about ERP, and I know of one in particular, one more reason why you'd want to be modern, and this is one that I actually saw recently, and this was kind of a scary one, but the customer was actually on AX4. So Exapta is another one of our old legacy on-prem solutions. AX4 is really, really, really old, and they ended up getting a ransomware attack, and it required getting it's been out of out of support, out of patching or anything from Microsoft for years, and they had to track down an architect that could handle rebuilding AX4 from the ground up, and that resource and that just project in itself was incredibly expensive. So not only are you at risk with ransomware and all the things that can hurt your business, but then standing it back up can be devastating if you're not on a modern system. So appreciate you having me on. I mean, I do think that we can talk about our modern cloud and how Business Central is built on our secure platform with Azure. It certainly is an interesting topic to see, again, a poll just popped up, what people are using, if they're in the cloud on ERP already, what their thoughts are on-prem and all the things that might be exposed when you are on-prem. So I'll pause and let you take on, Steve.
Sure. Yeah. And that, as you're mentioning, kind of the Microsoft cloud in some of these legacy systems, it also kind of reminds me of thinking for people to think about what is included in ERP. And so sometimes we just think about just the application, like, is it GP? Is it BC? Is it Sage? What is it? And knowing, but not really thinking about, do I have some kind of integration middleware that's running? Do I have some kind of API that's connecting data? I still see this even now where everything is very locked down and security conscious, but they use maybe an external billing system or an external AP automation payment process system or something. And the customer is doing file transfers to import data, import or export data. And that's not necessarily bad in of itself. And they may think, oh, that's no problem. I'm using SFTP. It's secure. It's encrypted, all these things. But then when you dig a little further, sometimes we find, well, wait, that data came out of one system, you put it on this shared drive somewhere, then you moved it somewhere else, then you brought it in. What about all these intermediate points that you think are okay, and maybe they're protected as far as the outside world is concerned, like everything else that the IT team is doing is protecting the business. But now we're talking about more from, I wouldn't say these are bad actors necessarily, but now the data is exposed in a way where we didn't know that more people could see these files than we thought. It kind of gets back. We've heard this morning. I heard a lot of conversations about AI and data that's out there and what's not out there. But sometimes it's as simple as, again, not everybody except the people that have built the ERP maybe even know that this is there. But then if they're not done correctly, you've got what you think is secure, but you've got super critical, important data that you don't want touched, manipulated, or even seen. Sometimes it's sitting in these intermediate points on its way into the ERP system. It's very safe when it's in there, but in transit, sometimes we see that challenge too. And so for that scenario, there are, say, cloud versions of these integration tools too, and cloud versions to make sure that when files are being moved, that nothing is exposed, and we've done the extra work to make sure that they're not sitting in a place where they shouldn't be. Because again, it's not necessarily a bad actor, but it could be accidental or just prying eyes internally that don't need to touch or see that data.
It was interesting, Steve, you brought up the AI topic too. As a Microsoft employee, I think I'm obligated to say Copilot a couple of times on this call. So Copilot 10 times just so I hit my quota of mentioning it. But at least with Business Central, we do have Copilot built in as a interface, and Copilot chat, of course, is free. And the security within Copilot is grounded in the M365 tenant security as well. Yeah.
I can't tell if you got something in your throat or if your signal's getting lost, but you're starting to really get pretty choppy.
Okay.
You think, or did you walk outside to enjoy the day?
Let me mess with the.
Sounding okay on my side, James.
Yeah, maybe it was you, James.
Steve, what'd you say?
It's sounding good on my end. Or maybe it's on your end. Am I sounding bad too?
Steve's saying it sounds good on his end, so it might just be. Yeah, it might be the entire production crew here in Houston and not you guys. So,
okay, I'll just keep going then.
Oh, there. Yep. Nora's saying choppy on her end as well. Let's just take a deep breath and make sure that bandwidth catches up. That's how internet works, right?
Yeah. Let me know if I need to kill video stream if it's something with my wireless. But if you feel good, we can keep going, James.
Steve, I think you were a bit choppy to me as well. Can you test that?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Eric, you sound good, James, and so does Eric. So,
yep.
But it could be up and down. And Eric and I are not.
I'm hearing some are chiming in saying it sounds fun. Okay. Well, hey, since most of the audience is saying it sounds fine, I'm going to go ahead and assume it has something to do with the Houston network. So, Steve, let's try to pick back up. I will tell you there is a question that Todd put in there about security. We'll come back to that once the Houston team's back. Sorry, apologies guys for interrupting.
Yeah, no problem. I think Eric was going into and let you pick back up there, but talking about Copilot in BC and how it's walled off and some things like that, I think are very important.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a little bit of a plug, shameless for Copilot in itself versus other AI tools. But we are building it within the platform, and to your point, Steve, like. This is now then, using the data loss prevention, the privacy, the compliance, all of the same governance that you've got in your tenant for M365 across Copilot, and then of course across Business Central as well. So I think, as much as we want to be a single solution, sometimes we do have those other applications which are contributing to the business, and at least from an AI standpoint, we can help keep that locked down from a security lens. Yep.
Right. And I mean, there are some features too that I would say from Copilot point of view, if you think like an internal auditor, you think about someone that's kind of evaluating this from not from necessarily a technical point of view, but from a now if we talking about how people use ERP, like what are some of the ways that I can have AI help me see if there's problems with my data, see if there's problems with my accounting, and it's not so much again like a bad actor or a security concern, but maybe kind of starting moving into, of course, we want to have the structure of our ERP system. The right people have the right access to the right data, and that's very secure and locked down. But then there's other issues of what can we do that helps data integrity. And so I know it's not necessarily cybersecurity threats, but I kind of think of it in terms of, again, this is super important inside the application, and people that are security minded need to be thinking about. And we see this too from there's been a few deals just in the last year where we've had either a large company buy a smaller company, and that parent company is either a public company or has very strict IT controls that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see at a smaller company. Or we've had a couple of them where venture capital backed money wanted to put into place things at the right level. And so they specifically choose products like Business Central, not just for the back end, but because we have things like we got change logs, workflow, audit trails. You might think of those as accounting controls, but they're also helping with security, right? Data security, but also just people security, doing the right things. And I know there's a few things you have to kind of learn how to use it. And like Copilot MBC, for example, helps you analyze your data, look for anomalies, look for problems. Again, you might think of that as an accounting thing, but it's moving in the direction of let me feel more secure about, if I see a spike, I see a problem, something unusual happens, I can see a path in the future, I think, where Copilot, even MVC, is going to start helping me understand my data. And if there has been a problem that somebody didn't pick up.
Yeah. Steve, you've kind of put some light bulbs off in my head, and I'm going to try to talk through them logically. But the first one is sort of that blurred line of compliance along with security, right? So if you have to follow SOC, if you have to follow HIPAA, if you have to follow high trust, if you've got anything with the government, you get into FedRAMP and DFARS, like all of those compliance requirements. The good thing, at least from a cloud standpoint with Microsoft, is we have the Trust Center. So it's a public facing site with all of those compliance documentation when we've gone through the last approvals, and you can access all of that. And then you can actually get into the security center within your tenant as well. So there's this blurred line, right? Like, so there's the things that Microsoft is doing to help our end customers meet the compliance requirements that they have. Some of those are rooted in security. So it's not just the actual security of the platform itself, but the tools that you're using. But then you get into the user piece of it too, right? So how do we start to be secure in the system from a authentication, from an access, what objects, tables, reports, data do I have as a user? So not necessarily an external bad actor, but you said an internal, right? Whether you're intending to be an internal bad actor or not, but someone with access to certain data that they shouldn't have to. And all of those controls, are available within Business Central.
When we were talking yesterday, you used the word obey in the context of, Business Central has to obey M365. And I thought that was interesting to put it into perspective of course, we've got our own process type security in BC on what I can do on a page and what I can process. But I thought it was interesting to think about we're inheriting all of the other controls that somebody has set. So that's so important on how they need to work together.
Yep.
Okay. A couple of other things, just kind of going along those lines then of kind of the internal use. So there's we hear a lot about phishing, right? And there's a lot of training on phishing attacks and things. And there's always the example, of, you get the text from this supposed CEO to wire money and things like that. And so, and we all seen those scenarios. And of course that is relevant to ERP, but then there's also just things that are similar to that are not necessarily an external, like a pretend email from a CEO or something like that. But again, if people get access into ERP, so now it's even more dangerous, right? Of saying getting that access into ERP because ERP is a target, and then ERP users in particular are a target, is where again it might even look like things have been set up in the system. So that'd be the worst case scenario, I think. And I've only heard a few of those cases, but I have heard a few scenarios out there where um, somebody's made it all the way into your system and has knowledge of that type of system and can then start doing transactions. It's pretty rare, but it's kind of like the scary worst case scenario. Again, that's where those controls of what we mentioned earlier, BC users obeying what M365 can do, and also then just the the analytics that we can do with the change log and with the segregation of duties, things that some of this again becomes what are the accounting controls that we can do. Um, but I think that's a big overlap in there to again prevent what if someone has made it inside, and how do you identify those, especially in a high volume scenario? How do you identify those transactions?
Yeah, well, I think it's also critical to look at it from I'm trying to think of the movie quote here since we kicked off this session with
Yeah,
movie quotes, but I think it's something like you're out of your element, right? I think that's a Big Lebowski
Lebowski.
quote. Yeah, yeah, Big Lebowski. You're out of your element, right? I mean, I would never accuse an end customer or prospect of being out of their element, but I think it's the important of folks like you, Steve, in doing this design and implementation and support and building those business processes out within an ERP like Business Central, right? To put those controls in from a business process so someone can't just place an order for 1,000 widgets and ship it out on their own without an approval process. So someone can't sell something for under a landed cost or for free and ship it out without control. So, not that a typical accountant or controller or even person in IT who's setting up the accounting system would want those things to happen, but you've got the experience to put those checks and balances in from a business process to make sure those things don't happen. So, you've got everything from physical security to the technical security to, user security, all of these things up to and including business process, just to make sure the checks and balances are there from a business process standpoint.
right. And we also see some of that, and you're right, as far as our implementation team role. I mean, it is part of our role, having had some of us are ex-accountants, some of us are just business people or operations, but knowing those kind of scenarios that could happen. And we are definitely recommending a best practice of, the tools there. It's not just BC. Most cloud tools are going to have the capability to help you watch for those things. Some are going to do it more automated than others. Um, but we advise on that, whenever we see those. And then one of those that's similar, especially at the higher volumes, is if we have customers, for example, that are selling to big box retailers, like somebody that's selling to Walmart, well, likely then they're using EDI, which is electronic data interchange. Basically, it's a little bit old school, but think of it just like electronic documents that say I want to buy and sell things. Well, in that scenario, again, it's so critical that when you're doing that or evaluating it with what your team's doing or working with a partner, that okay, how is this being set up? That always involves some type of communication between the provider that's interacting with, say, Walmart or interacting with a trading partner. How is that set up? And what happens if some crazy size order comes through and there's not a mechanism to catch it? It's fully automated, right? Now you may be on the back end of one of these if it got intercepted, or if even in some cases it's just it's unintentional. But yeah, those are things that we look at when we're helping set up the system, and we're always very cognizant of. And this is important too. When a customer from the ERP side will often come to us. I mean, they are obviously asking about how do I use Copilot? How do I use this? When should I start using agents, or when should I use this? But a common scenario would be okay, I want to do AP automation, which is a faster way, a more efficient way to process paying your bills, essentially accounts payable, paying your bills. Well, there's so many tools out there, and you sometimes have people evaluating those. Part of our role is evaluating those from, okay, most of them are cloud based, do something, and then it interacts with BC. So again, it's kind of the flip side of we're helping customers, advising them on what do we know about that product that you think you want to use, or what have we, here's the one that we've vetted out for you. And again, the same thing in reverse. Okay, what is their clouds? What does their security look like? What is their team? What are their certs? And so we're doing that at the same time. Again, it's not just that core application that you have, but it's these complementary ones that your team needs to be aware of and vetting as they do the entire group.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as much as I would love to say Business Central solves all problems for all companies, there's going to be product gaps based on industry or just specific business process. So we're going to need those third-party ISVs that fill those gaps. And again, your experience as a partner in saying, okay, there's 6 AR automation or AP automation ISVs out there. Here are the 2 that we're confident will fill the gap and fit within the BC ecosystem from a security standpoint, from a governance standpoint. It's super important.
Right. All right. Looking at my notes here, James, I think I might have hit my notes. Did we have any? I didn't see if we had any questions.
Yeah, let's just talk more movie quotes, Eric.
Yeah. I mean, we appear to be about the same generation of movies. I've heard you say Happy Gilmore. We aligned on Big Lebowski, so I think that we would excel if that was the topic.
Yeah, I think Adam Sandler and Farley and Will Ferrell, they groomed us into watching movies with the intent of memorizing specific lines, not
Right.
for enjoyment. Allie, I have not been watching the chat as closely for questions. I know there was one around security, and if I could interpret it right, Eric, I think it had a lot more to do with the disguise of security. If IT directors or those in charge of the solution for ERP question, is it secure? Instead of giving specifics on how it's secure, it's just a blanket statement. Like, oh yeah, we got you. You're secure. I guess, do you have advice, Steve or Eric, on how do you question or what do you look into to ensure that what you're investing in is secure?
Yeah, I saw the question, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer it off the cuff, but I kind of get the
Eric, you're more qualified than I am.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna stab at sort of a punt, right? So I'm stabbing at a punt here, and what I'll say is, I think the question was, hey, Microsoft's got a ton of security in their data centers, both from a network, from a routing, from a storage, from all of this stuff. What is it? And I think the general response is people like Microsoft and maybe even Microsoft themselves say, well, we're not going to tell you, we're not going to let you access it, we're not going to let you play with that. And I think generally that's a little bit accurate, right? We don't want all of our security secret sauce to be necessarily exposed, but I also think there is a ton of documentation available. So I mentioned the Trust Center, and then Steve, I think you've got details on some of the actual stuff that could be in the tenant itself from a security standpoint. Like, are we getting down to, this is the firewall we use, or is this the antivirus we use? I mean, I think you can probably assume a lot of the stuff is Microsoft that we use, but I'm sure there's some more, and we may not expose all that. So I get it, right? And I think that there's probably a deeper dive to be had on how it's done from an architectural standpoint. And I've seen, technical folks from our partner ecosystem and from Microsoft show that, right? Like, they'll show the design and how it's done. But I don't know if we really let end customers or even partners into the software itself, right? So we are in charge of all the scaling and all of the hardware and everything that's in there. We're in charge of the code. We don't expose the code. In fact, Steve can speak deeper to this, but we extend the application so it can be customized to fit certain needs, but it's not like core code type stuff. So
yeah, we're really big focused on, at least my opinion is focused on the weak links here.
That's what they call me.
That. Yeah, I get that the question. I get that you want to know how Microsoft's doing it, and there's some information, but not a lot. But I'm really concerned about that link between something that's interacting or files that are coming, because we can import, export file. We can do so many things. Those are, I kind to me, are kind of the security weaknesses, or if they're not handled properly. Everybody thinks things fine because we're using VC, but then we find out someone is dropping a file somewhere on a location that they shouldn't. That's part of what we're looking at when we're helping them build the system out. And also if we come in and take over a system to help, from another partner, we're kind of evaluating that and evaluating the flow and looking for those kind of points.